Hi, good morning and welcome to the ZP Developer Zone. So we do this webinar every, it's not the ZP Developer Zone, it's the vlog and podcast. We do this every Sunday at 8 a.m. London time, and we're essentially going to sort of jump straight into it. So as I say, we just do a wrap up of the news from Zimmer and Peacock for this week and just sort of highlight things that we've talked about during the week. So the first thing I'll talk about now is the measuring of pH and glucose in cell culture. So in cell culture, I think the most widely used organism is Escherichia coli, E. coli, and this is a molecule that people do things like genetic engineering on, and let's say molecule, the cellular organism that people do genetic engineering on, and it expresses some macromolecule of interest. Now, you generally do these things on small scale, which people can refer to as cell culture, or they can do it on larger scale, which is maybe in a bioreactor. So what we've done at Zimmer Peacock is just sort of demonstrated that our biosensors are appropriate for measuring these kind of cultures, and we can get a sort of a pH or a glucose signal as a function of time. So it's really just an application note around the use of electrochemical biosensors for measuring either cell culture if it's small scale, or maybe bioreactors if it's larger scale. So it was nice of the team to do the work, and also then to sort of write it up. Now, we had an interesting question during the week, and we answered it, which was, does a electrochemical sensor require things like the addition of buffers, the addition of electrolytes? And the answer is, it really depends on the sample type itself. So for example, we used a glucose strip to illustrate the point that you can actually just prick your finger, put a drop of blood on a glucose strip, and within 5 seconds you get the result. So there was no apparent addition of salts and buffers. Now, there are some of these salts and buffers dried down on the sensors, but you're not sitting there, or the user's not sitting there formally preparing the sample, like you would do in a laboratory. No, in fact, they're just, I want to say, just simply getting on with it. They put the drop of blood on there, the drop of blood wicks into the device under a capillary fill. When it gets in there, it's probably dissolving some salts and buffers into the sample. But I would, personally say that, blood is actually very well controlled in terms of its pH, and very well controlled in terms of its salt content. And so blood is a kind of one of those samples where, in fact, you don't need to necessarily do a lot of sample preparation. So the short answer is it necessary? Not necessarily. Not necessarily is the answer. And it really depends on the application and the sample type. And, in the case of the world's biggest application, which is glucose monitoring, no, it wasn't necessary, apparently, at all. Now, some other news from Zimmer Peacock this week as well is there's a sort of real shift of technology, because we were just talking about electrochemical biosensors, and something else that we put out this week is actually a Nanopore Kit that we have. So at Zimmer Peacock, we do have a Nanopore Kit. It's not something we're super well known for, but in fact, we do have this kit, and this is something that we've also got on the web store as well. So with the Nanopore, you have this essentially tiny little hole, and things transverse through that hole, and in doing so, you end up having a signal. And people use it in what's called NGS, next generation sequencing. So at Zimmer Peacock, we have a lot of technologies and a lot of capabilities, and one of them now that we have is the production of nanopores. Some other news from Zimmer Peacock this week is we've been working on multi-analyte systems for quite some time, and so the great engineers that we have built a handheld device which allows us to do 6 channels or 6 analytes at a time. So we put some images up on the website about it. and they've also, essentially prepared a prototype which looks pretty good. But the device is able to measure, as I say, up to 6 analytes in parallel. So well done to the ZP team for producing that. Some other news from Zimmer Peacock this week as well. This is, I wouldn't say for fun, but something that we've done because we wanted to try it out. Was and people have been talking for a while about 3D printing electrodes, and so we've been I want to say having a go ourselves as well, printing some of our electrodes and getting a sense of how well they're working. So we will report back on that when we've got some data. But thank you to the ZP team. I think it sort of says, at ZP, we make sensors from wires. We make sensors by screen printing. We make sensors by vapor deposition. And we also make sensors by 3D printing. So we do an awful lot of, say, sensor fabrication. Something that I've been wanting to do for a while as well is that there's a lot of terms using biosensing. I sometimes get these terms, and it clearly people are making inquiries, and these terms often display to me that, or present to me that, there's not always a common definition of terms. So I did put some terms up on the ZP website so that people could understand that when ZP is talking about things like settling time and signal resolution and signal drift and error grid analysis and biosensitivity, we, at least at ZP, we have our definition, and then it allows us to have a more clear conversation with people about what they're meaning by accuracy and precision. That would be the most contested terms, I think, that we actually get at Zimmer and Peacock. Now, some other news from Zimmer and Peacock this week. This was really quite nice. Shashikan, one of our really excellent engineers, went to USN, University of Southeast Norway. I just want to say that University of Southeast Norway, they do a smart systems SSI, I think it's called, masters. This is an Erasmus master, so you end up working at 3 universities, and many of our engineers actually came through that Erasmus masters, and now they work for us. So I just want to highlight that masters and say thank you to Shashikan for going up there and talking about her time at Zimmer and Peacock. So that was really appreciated. Now, some other news from Zimmer and Peacock this week is the Ammonium Fertilizers. So at Zimmer and Peacock, we have a biosensor for ammonium, and we were just kind of highlighting that this sensor can be used in sort of agricultural applications. The reason that we've done this is actually there's a real, say, problem with fertilizer production at the moment, at least in the UK. I just want to say good morning to Aftab as well. Nice to see you, Aftab. So we've got this ammonium fertilizer, and the reason that we're highlighting it is they've actually temporarily stopped ammonium production in the UK. They're still making the fertilizer, but the ammonium nitrate, I think they're not producing it in the UK, and because gas prices have got so high. So this really does emphasize the fact that we will need alternative sources of ammonium, or we will need to use ammonium in a more sort of controlled manner. And so our ammonium sensor can really help with that. So that's something that we're discussing on our website this week. Something that's really quite significant as well is this technology that we have, which is sensor to API. So sensor to API from Zimmer Peacock kind of means that we're able to make a pH measurement, and we're able to send that data immediately to the cloud. And that really does open up, a different kind of custodianship over the data. Where the data is. You can start building new business models around that data as well. So, I know in India there's a whole, industry of app developers and application developers, and so I think this sensor to API workflow would allow these developers to very quickly say, okay, I want to make a glucose sensor, and I want to be able to prove to an investor that I can take a drop of blood, measure glucose, and get it to the cloud really quickly. And with our technology stack, you generally can do that. Now this is really for us very significant, that we're delighted that we're going to be doing an electrochemical workshop in October, mid-October, and we're doing this one on the 13th and 14th of October at SSN College of Engineering. And so a couple of us will be from ZP in Europe, will be going across there, meeting up with Technando, and then doing these workshops there. So we do look forward to doing that. Now at the same time then, just a sort of, just with a day's break, a little bit before, we will also be doing a workshop at IIT Bombay. So we'd be very happy to be the guests of IIT Bombay, and we will be doing a workshop there as well. So this kind of complements the fact that we're doing workshops now in Norway. So we have a workshop in Norway in September, and now we have almost like a month later a workshop in India as well, and we will be announcing more workshops now that things are starting to open up. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has become endemic rather than pandemic. We will be willing to do these kind of workshops as well. This is something very different from everything else we talked today, but this is really a kind of movement. I want to say that, there's something called Industry 4.0, and sort of connected to that is Lab 4.0. A lot of what we do at Zimmer & Peacock, if you read the sort of About Us page, we said, we're part of the Internet of Things revolution. But we said, all the sensors are kind of missing, all the chemical sensors, electrochemical sensors are missing from Industry 4, or from the Internet of Things revolution. Well, Industry 4.0 is an over sort of arching concept which kind of says that industry can become more efficient if the equipment and processes within the industry are all connected and talking to one another. So it's really a kind of feeling of Internet of Things, except you are talking about kind of monitoring and control as well. And I just want to say that Zimmer & Peacock, we do feel like we are part of Industry 4.0. Our sensors can go in line or online to processes, and we can constantly monitor essentially processes, and really hopefully raise the efficiency of those processes. Now, Industry 4.0 is something that we actually something we follow at Zimmer & Peacock. So the nice thing about running a business is you can actually practice or rehearse some of your technologies and skills on yourselves. So Industry 4.0 is something that we do adhere to at Zimmer & Peacock. And because I've got Aftab on the line this morning as well, we are making our Julie platform also compatible with it's called OPCUA, Open Platform Communications United Architecture. This is just a kind of industry standard that says, if you are OPCUA compatible, then you can sort of be plugged into by other people's systems, and vice versa, you can plug other people's into your systems. So we are very interested in this OPCUA compatibility. So if I was just to sort of wrap up the news, it feels like a very busy week, and I think it's for us because generally we're kind of starting to come out of holiday season in Europe, but we have talked this week about measuring bacterial growth through glucose and pH. That's something that we're really familiar with at Zimmer & Peacock. The nice thing about electrochemical sensing, at least including the medical space, is you don't need to do sample preparation. This is really kind of displayed in the glucose space. We have also got nanopore technology, so rather than detecting, let's say, molecules like glucose and lactate, we're actually able to also work on things like next generation sequencing of things like DNA. We do have the Multi-Analyte Reader, able to read up to 6 channels of tests, so you can sort of do glucose, pH, lactate, oxygen, creatinine, for example, pH, for example, as well. So we do have that reader. We have put a quite a detailed note out there on the metrics for biosensors, and we hope that's sort of useful for people. And then we're delighted to be talking up at USN this week, sensors for ammonium, because actually the gas crisis that's at least happening in Europe, and we'll also spill over to many places, including India, then ammonium production is going down. We're going to have to use these fertilizers more cautiously, and that's why it's good to have these sensors. At Zimmer & Peacock, we have developed the whole stack to go from sensor to cloud, and we do call that kind of sensor to API, and we have illustrated that with our pH meter. And we are delighted that we do have some workshops running in India in mid-October, so if you are there, please sign up. And finally, a lot of what we're doing at Zimmer & Peacock about connectivity and measuring is actually all under the umbrella of industry or lab 4.0. Okay, so I want to thank you very much if you followed along this week, and thank you to AFTAB, and catch some of you soon. Okay, thanks very much.